Speaking in tongues.
It's me,
Yeah.
Dr. Scott, man. Watch me, Scott.
Watch me now. Hey, everybody. It's the Kooks, Cranks, and Iconoclast podcast. I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
And I'm J-Lo.
And we are here today, this week, all those times mixed together right now, to give you an episode that is a strange one. This is, we're focusing on a centralized subject, but in reality, this whole story has a lot of ins and outs, characters coming and going.
There's even some characters in a lead pipe.
Yeah, literal characters. They called him Le Chiffre.
A lead pipe?
Was it a lead pipe?
It was a lead pipe.
Weird.
You don't want to smoke from that.
There's another name for the overall affair. It's called the Fukurai affair. Occurred around the 1920s mostly. I want to say Meiji era Japan. That sound about right?
That makes me think of something historically completely inaccurate. It makes me think of like the Yakuza and like pinstripe suits in Tommy guns.
That's actually not far off, because this is around the time that Japan was becoming very westernized. There was a bit of a reset going on, culturally speaking. But yes, to no longer keep you in suspense about our main subject, that's going to be one Miss CHIZUKO MIFUNE. Coming in second and third and etc. place, we're going to be talking about Dr. Fukurai as well as Sadako Takahashi. This is a strange story that is almost kind of buried. You gotta go really looking into the information to get anything out of it. We chose CHIZUKO as the star of the show because she had a bit of a sad end. Not to give it all away up front, but you'll see. So yeah, starting I guess with CHIZUKO, why don't you break us off with some bio? Let us know all about who she was. Has Matt.
CHIZUKO MIFUNE, born July 17th, 1886, died January 19th, 1911, at the tender age of 24. Just barely blossomed into a woman. She was introduced as a woman of supernatural power, having toshi, or clairvoyance, or second sight power, by Dr. Fukurai, and she was from...
Tomokichi Fukurai. There it is.
There it is.
Fukurai, there it is.
Dr. Tomo... Bear with us on these names as well, because obviously there's a bit of a learning curve.
So she was from Uki City, Urugun, Kumamoto Prefecture. She was the second daughter of a Chinese medicine doctor, Hadamatsu Menin. I can't pronounce it, I'm sorry. I butchered it.
Sorry, people.
And
of
his
that
wife,
native tongue.
Yuki. My apologies. They said in a lot of these papers and articles that her parents were actually pretty big into frontier medicine type of stuff.
Yeah, Chinese folk medicine, it's everything from acupuncture to, I believe they call it moxibustion. That's where they put the weird little jars on you to bring your skin out. Yeah, and then the use of herbs. It's old-timey frontier medicine, but some of that shit actually works. It wouldn't be around for over thousands of years.
Got to be something to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do we do that here in the States, a lot of it?
Yeah, actually, I mean, go to any GNC, it's basically the same thing.
Okay.
You're getting a lot of the same stuff. And
Yeah, I mean
outside of acupuncture, we're talking thousands of years of early Eastern medicine. So you've also got to incorporate, chakras and prana and ki, tubes and levels and how the chi moves through your body, etc.
And your aura.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's pseudo-mystical, but it also does have very practical applications as well.
So it's been stated that she was deeply religious. I'm sure her family was as well. Her parents probably were,
Probably.
If you're into the old-timey medicine, then you're probably into some very old-timey stuff.
We're talking Shinto?
Predominantly Buddhist, I believe, with this family. A lot of the Chinese folk medicine doesn't really, I think a lot of it stems from Taoism and Confucianism, all going way, way back. In this era, it's all very, especially in Japan, it's all very syncretic, which means mixed together, belief-wise. So there is a little bit of Shinto, there's a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll. You know how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, at the age of 22 in 1908, she married an army lieutenant and moved in with her parents-in-law. She was introduced to hypnosis by her brother-in-law and allegedly developed her powers. By the age of 24, she was practicing breathing and meditation exercises. And this is where it gets pretty interesting because one day at the house, 50 yen disappeared, which is not good, you know. They're turning the house upside down looking for this money, and she says, "Oh, I think I know where it is. I had a vision quest, and I found that your 50 yen is in a drawer, in this specific drawer." And they go open it up, and there it was.
Bam.
And they're like, "Wow, that's amazing. Why did you steal 50 yen from us and hide it like you didn't fucking take it?"
Yeah, get the fuck out of the house.
Pretty much.
That's pretty much how that went down.
Wow.
Yeah, she...
Brutal.
She's not having an easy life. We'll say that much. That's for fucking sure. Once she started... And see, there's a lot of overlap with this story and the available information that kind of conflates CHIZUKO Mifune's life with Sadako. And the reason most people have maybe heard of this story is because Ringu, or the Ring, is based on all this stuff. The information has been so thoroughly, like, it's hard to tell where one person ends and another begins on, like, biographical information on certain things. But CHIZUKO definitely got the shitty end of the psychic stick.
Yeah, see, it gets even worse because they did this to a disabled person. She was deaf in her left ear.
Mm-hmm.
She was born with progressive impaired hearing. When she was, by the time she reached adulthood, she was said to have difficulty hearing in her left ear. She is said to have had fine sensibility and rich emotions. She also earnestly believed in Kanin Bosatsu. However, she was easily caught in pessimistic feelings. The power of thinking of good?
Yeah, power of positive thinking. Kanin, or sometimes Kwanin Bosatsu, is basically, once again, like a syncretic Buddhist / it's like a Japanese Shinto version. How best to put this?
Smile or it's gonna fucking hurt.
I was gonna say, aren't they pretty opposites? I mean, like the Japanese have a saying that says the nail that sticks out gets hammered down.
That really like goes into social interaction. For the longest time, Shinto and Buddhism were, side by side, and then for a while intertwined officially by the state. Years later, they sort of backtracked on that and undid it. But it was during that time, a lot of their deities, etc., because, there's like infinite Buddhas. There's just so many of them. And some are more important than others. And because some, had certain things or certain attributes going on with them, they were conflated with Shinto deities or spirits or gods. It's kind of the way that voodoo uses Catholic saints as stand-ins for orishas from Africa and things like that, like ancient gods. There's a lot of overlap, and
it's a melting pot of ideas there.
Yeah, people bring new deities to town, and they're just like, hey, that's just like so-and-so, the god of Ajax.
Huh.
So it's like,
I hear you're going to have to leave a bottle of liquor.
That could be convoluted quickly, man.
Yeah, I mean, hey, man, religion is a complicated thing, but Kwanin Bosatsu or Kanin Bosatsu is basically one of the biggies in Japan. She's all over the place.
The Santa Claus, if you will.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Hey, don't bring that guy up. He might show up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I think Colonel Sanders is the Santa Claus of Japan, and I'm not even being a dickhead and bullshitting. I think that's actually a true thing.
Well, you heard the story of how that became a traditional Japanese Christmas dinner, right?
Somebody tricked them into it.
Yeah, basically
the advertising company.
The first guy to buy a franchise in Japan.
He was a clever ad man.
Yeah, he said, oh, yeah, the Americans eat fried chicken on Christmas. It's totally traditional. The Madison Avenue guys rig up a picture for Christmas dinner in Japan, and everyone's gathered around a big, huge spread of KFC. He's like, I just lied about it, and everybody believed me, and I'm not going to stop.
Hey, man, that's how
very American of it.
That's how the world works. It's cool. It's
billions of dollars later. Here I am.
Yeah, it's wiki reality. I mean, it's no different than Santa Claus here being instantaneously conflated with Coca-Cola. It's pretty much the same thing. So
What made him fat?
that's one of them.
It's what gave him the first 8 heart attacks.
Fattest crackhead I've ever seen. So yeah, the religion aspect of this is not always cut and dry. There's some strange aspects. I will try to chime in to clarify what I can here and there. I am by no means an expert, but yes, she was very devout. I know that her psychic ability kicked into hyperdrive after she started practicing certain meditation techniques, etc., that her brother-in-law had taught her. He also apparently hypnotized her at some point or multiple times, and basically said,
Sounds like the intro to a
have you seen
website.
this movie? No, he basically hypnotized her and said, you have psychic powers at one point, and that kind of helped kick things into overdrive from that point.
So earlier we mentioned that from a practicing family of folk medicine, she's also disabled, and her family, her in-laws, are kind of buttholes. It's a little bit to expand on. After she married that lieutenant colonel, one Kaiken Kawachi, like we said, she had guessed the whereabouts of the 50 yen in question. It was supposed to be.
It was kind of scary to them. A combo of this can't be real.
Yeah.
Also,
the only obvious solution is I'm going to turn you all into salt. They're just so she had guessed that
superstition.
She had guessed that the 50 yen had disappeared from her husband's wallet and was in the Buddhist altar that her parents-in-law were using, which caused her mother-in-law to attempt suicide.
Yeah.
Overreaction much?
Yeah, I hate it when that happens.
This incident led to her divorce from him after a very short-term marriage and to return to her family home. In the family house, her brother-in-law, her older sister's husband, Takio Kiyohara, dormitory dean and a PE teacher, because you can always trust them, had mesmerized her, saying, "You have the power of Toshi," clairvoyance, and tested her, which brought forth such good results that he continued her training. After that, he saw that the 6th Division unit happened at,
of the military.
What is with her brothers-in-law?
I think it's the same brother-in-law.
Yeah, it's the same guy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The one who taught her initially?
Yeah, he's the one who basically, with a lot of this stuff, from my understanding of it, when you're dealing with going into trance-like states and trying to access clairvoyant facilities of your own mind, etc., it takes a lot of practice. Like what we talked about with, the gateway process. You have to listen to that stuff for a long time to get to the point where you can basically shut yourself off through the act of meditation, or shut your mind off.
Yeah, and activate that one portion of the brain.
Yeah, hypnosis is all about shutting down the critical part of your brain that's constantly asking questions and what about this, what about that, whereas the subconscious mind is very accepting of everything. Okay, whatever, cool.
I got hypnotized once.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it didn't. Still smoking.
Yep. I'm a chicken.
Yeah. I'm a Colonel Sanders chicken.
But yeah, basically, over time, she could get to where she was able to easily access these sort of trance-like states by herself. So he was sort of coaching her.
She's a big girl now.
He is a PE teacher, after all.
Yeah.
So.
After that, she saw the 6th Division unit happen to have not been on board of the sunk warship Hitachi Maru at the Russo-Japanese wartime, which was about first 8 years of that century, and had discovered Manda coal mine in the Omuda city, Fukuoka Prefecture, on the request of Mitsui Gomai Kaisha, receiving
20,000 yen.
20,000 yen. Mike has the same note, which would be equal to about 20 million yen in the present value.
Essentially, she was farming her abilities out to the government or the military, and the Mitsui Gomai Kaisha, I believe, was a coal mine company.
Yeah.
So she's essentially farming her powers out. People found out she had these abilities, and she's farming them out to the military, private corporations.
Farming, yeah, that's the word.
Yeah, that's that's what we'll go with for now.
So she's basically the air tag for coal mines, warships,
It's
anything you're looking for.
It's basically remote viewing. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's getting tagged.
It's the precursor to remote viewing. And yeah, I've heard these same stories conflated with Sadako as well. So there's some parallels here, but I do believe, I'm not sure. I've heard both of these conflated to both women. She was also using her abilities. She went from like hospital to hospital trying to heal people. So
basically she was like, hey, you're going to get a cup of coffee today. And then what? And it's going to be really hot. And then?
I could kill the president.
Then, ironically, you're going to choke on coffee and die. And
You're going to
not from
drop
your
it.
Disease.
You're going to drop the coffee all over your new dress. Don't get the coffee.
So yeah, she's using these abilities for the military / government, for private corporations. She's getting paid, going to hospitals and using like faith healing sort of hands-on Reiki approach to healing the sick, or at least trying to. So it's through all this that she eventually makes a name for herself. Because once again, with much of the available information, the story just kind of jumps to like, oh, here come these men, these important men who want to study her abilities. It doesn't really talk about the part where all of a sudden she's famous for doing this stuff, but this is sort of building her own legend, more or less.
It is kind of shitty that they just jump from there to, we need to study you.
Kinda.
Why do you need to study me? Because we think you might be full of shit.
We'll see. And once again, also to sort of put things in context, like I think I mentioned earlier, like Japan is becoming very westernized at this point. You still have like a small handful of dudes who are like no shit for real samurai hanging around. But now they're starting to wear like business suits and ties and things like that.
And their swords?
Some.
That's awesome.
And then you have a lot of the imperial family and nobles and people who were of a higher societal strata, I guess you'd say, are wearing a lot of, military medallions and...
bling.
Yeah, basically. It's very official bling with their suits, etc.
And don't forget, this is the Wild West of psychology, psychiatry.
Yeah.
And everything's open. This is the same time where
Western culture is like
Wilhelm Reich's work
through crazy.
is just now getting popular. And Sigmund Freud's work is spreading around the world. This is all fantastic new information. Like, man, we might be able to make like the perfect state
That poor
if
girl.
we can just get psychology to work for us.
Yeah.
I mean, she just had good intentions and like, this is what happened.
That's the world. That's how it works, man. So you have all this westernization going on, culturally speaking, but there are still sort of these pockets of resistance and holdout, and they're especially also within the same higher strata. You have a lot of admixture of different, like people who work for universities. It's like, especially in this case,
Like the janitors?
no, teachers, administrators, etc.
Just that one guy that figured out the math problem on the blackboard.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Hey, I'm Japanese over here.
He's turning Japanese.
Oh, man. So, a lot of these guys, they don't, this is like still, turnover from samurai times. It's not that long ago. Some of these dudes are still carrying their fucking swords around and shit.
The hardcoreism of Japan is still very prevalent in everybody's mind.
Yes, and you basically have this resistance to the westernization coming in.
Even though they're all dressed in Western attire?
And don't forget, they just kicked Russia's ass.
Yeah, there's that too.
They just proved that they're supposed to be a superpower. So everybody's really high
Exactly.
and mighty on their own smell of their shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of imperialism, like, nationalism kicking up big time. And some of these, like, leftover samurai dudes, you have these sort of, I almost hesitate to say secret societies, but that's what they were.
They're holdovers, man.
Yeah, they're, like, very fascist. They're very militarized. They want to go back to the shogunate. They definitely 100% believe that the emperor is a divine deity upon the earth. This is basically the thought that eventually gives way to, we need you guys to be divine wind kamikaze soldiers to die for our country and our cause.
You're Admiral Thrawn from Star Wars, if you will.
Sure.
Devout to the Emperor, but they're military soldiers, but they're super crazy. And
It's a military theocracy. That's the best way I can put it.
ooh,
Their god walks upon the earth and his family. So yeah, and once again, they're embracing Western ideas and Western culture, and especially industrialization and things that, you know, will help them economically, etc.
things that will move their society forward.
Yes, but at the same time, sorry, what?
The reforms being made during industrialization, they kind of want to IV drip the Western culture part into it, but they want all the benefits from the freedoms. They just don't necessarily want those people to have the freedoms.
Yeah, well, they want to take all the things that have always made them great and strong and fucking turn that up to 11. This is a weird time in Japan, and I'm sorry, it's the Meiji period. Meiji.
This is the time of Tom Cruise in Japan, right?
No, he's already dead.
Oh, that's okay.
He won't be resurrected again until like whenever he was born himself.
That movie.
As a Scientologist, I no longer have to go to the bathroom. No, I'm sorry, Japan in the Meiji era, because of all this industrialization coming in and things like that, and Western culture and psychology and science, etc., you still had these holdouts to the old ways. There's actually people who thought that, like, you know, train tracks were greased with blood, and that,
They're not?
depends on where you go. Arkansas. Let's see, what else? Like, they thought that, like, power lines, you know, had interference of supernatural abilities, or it, like, hurt and disrupt the spirits, which maybe is not too far off either. That virgins were sacrificed into certain buildings, like the cornerstones, which is also something that happened quite often throughout history. But
they're not?
This is sort of, like, changing. So you have, like, this weird... It's a weird time, like... You know,
is this where like a lot of their started happening?
They were wearing T-shirts that said, "Bro, come on, it's the 1900s."
Like, I mean, like super intense. What's the word I'm looking for here? Fetishes started occurring. You know how Japan is known for their fetishes.
I mean, I think that's always kind of been around, but it was more, you know, like if you want to kind of look back at our Edogawa Rampo episode. Like, this is kind of around the same time as him, too. So you have, you know, culture sort of embracing stuff like that to a degree. And the Edo-Gudo Nansensu, you know, just looking at, like, Edogawa Rampo's stories and just the weird shit that was in them, like
It's amazing how open they were to a lot of concepts.
Yeah.
And at the same time, on the other end of that spectrum, how closed off they were to relinquish anything else.
Yeah, once again, you know, the Edo-Gudo Nansensu was... The whole nonsensu part was the talk of new political and philosophical and social ideas, etc. It was all nonsense because we got our system figured out. Our shit is sewed up tight. That's cool. We'll like look at all the mutilated women or whatever and the weird fucked up like mystery stories and crazy art, whatever, you know, that's fine. But politically speaking, we're the shit. We've always been the shit. And we're only getting more shitty. So, like, once again, they're high. Yeah, they're high. They're riding high.
Yeah.
And it's just a weird era in history where you have these, like, lingering supernatural things going on. And that's kind of what this whole story is about, too. Like, you'll see sort of how things play out. It's a fight for the psychic soul of Japan. And, what force will win? You have, you know, the new nationalist, serialist forces of domination, or these sort of old-timey, in tune with spirits, psychic abilities, harmony with nature, etc. kind of thing going on. There's a strange psychic dichotomy taking place in the background.
Enter stage left. One.
Snagglepuss.
Yeah, that guy. Mike, will you pronounce the name again? I'm gonna get it wrong.
Snagglepuss.
Thank you, J-Lo.
Psychically powered, even. Professor Tomokichi Fukurai, assistant professor of psychiatry or psychology at the University of Tokyo.
That's in Tokyo.
Hey! He was interested in the supernatural and ESP, which he was heavily criticized by his peers for. However, he was convinced of Mifune's powers and abilities.
He had a fetish for ESP.
He loved witchy women. He privately tested her in April of, I think this is 19...
That's privately tested, not tested or private.
Yes.
Right.
Privately tested her in April 1910.
As far as we know. 1910.
A second, more public test
Yes.
was conducted.
And that's another weird thing. Like, you'd think that this man, as a professor and more or less a man of science, would be utilizing much more
scientific
and stringent methods of testing. But once again, this is also like on the cusp of that era when like psychical research is still taking place, and you're coming off the heels of spirituality, like we kind of talked about in our Arthur Conan Nacho Doyle episode. So big time scientific interest into looking into this stuff, and most of it's coming from an agenda of like, this is bullshit, we're going to debunk it. But then you have people who,
on the other side, are
like they're
so desperate.
And I think Dr. Fukurai kind of falls in between, because he strikes me as a bit of a Fox Mulder type dude. Like, he wants to believe, but at the same time, those people, like, that mindset can get like desperate.
He's not gonna get scammed.
And that's the thing. Like, you hear about it a lot, even today, like with certain, parapsychology studies, and even like shit with Bigfoot. You have these people who are like so close to having some kind of ephemeral evidence that it's as good as we're going to get, but then they got to juice the story just a little bit, and it fucks everything up. It just discredits everything else. So
somebody get me Mifune.
Way to go. Way to go.
Yeah, Fukurai, he kind of sort of falls into this camp a little bit. I think he had something in his craw from fucking his colleagues talking shit to him about all this stuff all the time. That
you guys are jerks.
Yeah.
I know all about.
You rip on me 13 or 14 more times and I'm out of here. I think sort of got driven a little bit further and faster to vindicate himself in proving some of this. And depending on which story you listen to, there are, once again, forces at work, competing ideologies going to war here that will affect things, and there will be a fallout.
Why we always gotta have that shitty dude, or like the shitty dude leading the pack of shitty people?
I don't know, man.
Because shitty people get shit done, apparently.
Yeah.
They form these squads called shit squads. Right? And they go out.
And they just stand right in front of your parade.
And swim in shit. They
Special
throw shit.
Human Investigation Task Force. Especially like in the world of the supernatural, man. Like, this is what kind of, if I may, sort of editorialize just a bit, as you know I like to do. We're in a right now. We're
speculation.
We're in an era of like ghost bros all over the TV. Like people using these little like gadgets that supposedly detect ghosts, and it's like, oh yeah, because I remember when we caught a ghost in a lab. And we're able to test that these gadgets can detect them. Yeah,
we grabbed that xylophone and fucking clearly caught this ghost.
Yeah, or we turn on the PlayStation and see some stick figure dancing around.
Or they used fucking lingo from Ghostbusters, like turn on the EKG reader.
Yeah, it's all horse shit.
A heart monitor? What do you need a heart monitor for?
Yeah, or like there's some like phone app that switches through radio stations and is supposed to pick up EVP. But it's, it's all horse shit.
Yeah.
Because none of it has ever been tested scientifically against an actual, like, people aren't going to be happy either, myself included, until we have a fucking ghost in a box or a museum
I want
or a
President
zoo.
Garfield's fucking ghost in a fucking jar.
But because, it's not... There's a whole unspoken sort of subconscious side to why this stuff is so popular, because it feeds into our fear of death. It reinforces beliefs in an afterlife, or that something happens after we're here instead of just becoming worm food. Who knows? As much as that is going on, I'm glad that we have people like the amazing Randy And to a somewhat similar, and I think personally better degree, Penn and Teller. They're like students of his.
Wasn't it The Amazing Jonathan? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
That's the coked up stage magician.
Not anymore. He's clean, I hear.
I'm sure, yeah. India. No, yeah.
Indiana.
Like, people, James Randi and Houdini, skeptics who are like attack dogs. We need dudes like this to destroy the flim-flammers. If John Edwards wants to say, like, someone here in the audience, you have a dead mother, her name starts with a
letter.
With a letter. It's like, I have a dead mother who starts with a letter. Like, it's cold reading, and people just, they want the comfort and the belief.
See, that day, they put nothing but orphans in there to prove him wrong.
Hey, man, it's just like how the televangelists and church services did it back in the day. This one's got rheumatoid arthritis. Try not to make him walk out of the wheelchair. It's going to be a bad scene.
And I will bless you with my lightsaber.
God bless you with this punch to the back of the head.
Yeah, you're cured. At the same time, a lot of these guys, these skeptics, like there's a dude named Joe Nickel who's man, these people are just like no fun. They have to poke holes in everything. These are the same people who come up with shit like swamp gas. So they don't want to acknowledge that there may possibly be some kind of a vast other world that we're not privy to, or, wonders and mysteries, etc. So
yeah, it's like when people say, well, science is wrong all the time. Like, yeah, because science is self-policing. That's how it works.
Yeah.
If I can recreate it, then it's true. If I can't recreate it.
It was subjective as shit, man, because it's through the eyes of humans. And we like to think that it's not, but it so is.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing, like, that's a continuous problem or issue that's built in to things like the supernatural and mysticism, etc., because it's always a subjective experience.
And a very emotional one.
Yeah, so these forces at work in the world sometimes reach out and touch people, and, they don't know how to fucking deal with it, and, nobody does. There's no playbook to it.
Well, this guy knew how to deal with it right here. So that very public test that she did, sorry, we jumped like way off sides.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to provide the contextual, the contextual sort of mindset of what's going on in the world and in Japan, especially at this time, where this is all coming from.
So a very public second test was conducted by Tokyo University president Baron Yamakawa. I'm probably sure I pronounced that incorrectly. Yamakawa, thank you. Kenjiro, right? Is that the last name? I'm so sorry, everyone.
You sound like Fozzie.
Thanks.
Waka waka waka.
Hey, on September.
That's Feltist, bro.
Yeah, that is Feltist. So the test was conducted on September 15th, 1910. She appeared to read messages written inside hidden envelopes. However, when these messages turned out to be not from Yamakawa, but from Fukurai, thank you.
Right.
She was widely seen as a charlatan and heavily criticized by the press. A modern researcher, Roger Anderson, has noted that the experiments were not properly controlled, as Mifune was, quote, often left alone with the test envelope or insisted on turning her back to witnesses when attempting to physically probe its contents.
Yeah, and once again, you hear a lot of this with the other woman, Sadako, as well. What they were doing in these tests is essentially, that scene in Ghostbusters, to keep coming back to it, but hey, man, it's a cultural touchstone. They're using the Zinner cards, and every time he gets it wrong, or actually every time he gets it right, he gets electrocuted. It's kind of the same deal, but these, basically the Zinner card symbols or whatever that they're using are sealed in envelopes. And they're hermetically sealed, and they're supposed to be monitored the whole time, overseen by Fukurai and the other professors and college boffins and big heads that are involved in this whole ordeal. They're the ones that are supposed to sort of be policing the experiment itself. And she is meant to essentially do the great Johnny Carson bit where she takes the envelope, puts it to her head, and says, "Dippity-doo." and then opens it up and says, "What do you find in your dippity first thing in the morning?" So, same deal. It's a classic psychic test.
Yeah.
Her insistence upon, sort of...
You know what the problem was? She didn't have a sidekick up there.
She was
She
a
didn't
woman.
She didn't have her McMahon.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was her problem. She was a female.
Well, that too. That I'm sure it didn't help. I can only imagine, like, if you have quote unquote clairvoyant abilities that you have to like concentrate hard to get to. It's probably weird to have a room full of men staring at you while you're trying to access these abilities. It's like the same thing as going to the doctor and your blood pressure's shooting up because you know you're at the doctor and they're like, "Man, your blood pressure is fucked." And it's like, "Yeah, I know. Thanks." So kind of the same deal.
Because your nurse tried to stab me earlier.
You know what's crazy about this is if she had all this charisma like Hildegard of Bingen did, then they would be like, "Oh, we just love you to death and everything that you say is true." But if you think about it, people with these kinds of abilities with charisma are also the first people to scam you.
I wouldn't say she was charismatic at all.
That's what I'm saying. She wasn't charismatic, and she was just out to help people, and so they vilified her for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And once again, once this story kind of unfolds and gets bigger, you will see that there are agendas at play here. Speaking of agendas at play, I think the tobacco companies would like us to take a quick break. So we'll be right back after this.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere, and even earn some money. All in one place, for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. Here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record, edit podcasts right from your phone, computer, no matter what. Setup super easy. You can start creating today. Then you can distribute podcasts to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take conversations with your fans to the next level, Q&A polls are the best way to get them talking. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. We love it. We also love the analytics portion of it because we get to monitor where people are watching and listening and stuff like that. Pretty sweet. So download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
We're back. And this is the point where CHIZUKO MIFUNE is basically being tested by Dr. Fukurai, as well as a fairly sizable contingent of other professors from Tokyo University, and especially Baron von Munchausen. The Baron. Let's just say the Baron for now.
Baron Yamakawa Kenjiro.
Yes, and remember the Baron. He's the big dog in all this. He's the president of the university. He's
the smartest man alive.
Yeah, the Baron is the one who essentially has more writing on this than anyone else, and he's also the most well connected. Once again, this is a time in Japan where Westernization is taking hold. And the Baron, although he himself specifically actually was a former samurai, there's actually pictures of him, wearing the old-timey robe type garb with his sword. But as a sort of, let's say, for lack of a better term, attaché to high society and the powers that be at this time, he also is one of those dudes that, you see a lot of other pictures of him. He helped open several universities. He opened them and sort of cut the ribbon, etc., and sort of dictated how things were going to go down at these universities. So he's essentially the personification of the academic establishment, more or less. And he's got a lot riding on what's going on with us as well, because with Westernization and this being a psychic issue, you have a woman who essentially using her quote-unquote supernatural abilities to help people and heal the sick, diagnose illnesses, find lost items, just generally helping people around her village, etc., building up quite a reputation for herself. The powers that be, they're not into this. This could potentially become a whole
thing.
Yeah, like see Jesus of Nazareth, etc. Footnote. That's that's a extreme version of what is boiling over in the minds of the people in charge, more or less. Also, it should be noted that as the more or less personification of the academic establishment, he himself is one of the powers that be. There are pictures of him wearing pseudo-military garb, covered in, military bling and medals, etc. Special specific awards for what are various, essentially Japanese versions of Masonic lodges and institutes, organizations that are largely ritualistic in purpose, that are connected to the royal family, who, once again, are gods walking the earth, essentially.
So how many heads he cut off?
I mean, I'm sure that comes into play as well. But essentially, he's the one that's kind of in the back of the room, sort of watching all this go down. CHIZUKO ends up actually getting quite a few of the tests correct, enough that this is time to sort of stand up and take notice. I mean, she was already built a name for herself, working for corporations and the government, etc., helping people, healing the sick. So
until that public demonstration.
Yes, the guidelines of experimentation for parapsychological research, specifically psychic abilities, clairvoyancy, etc. There's all kinds of loopholes and way things can go wrong, and like the controls in the experiment aren't set very well. A lot of these sealed messages and characters that she's supposed to decipher with her abilities have been handled by multiple people. There's too many cooks in the kitchen, basically. They see that she has enough of a degree of... She's got a good track record, basically. It looks like there might be some weird shit going on here. Once again, that's not good for some people, but a lot of these people also being academics, being from academia, they're coming into this with a very hardline, skeptical, nose in the air, this is obviously all bullshit sort of attitude, like right out the gate.
It's that shit squad.
Yeah. So they could tell from the tests and experiments that her abilities were reinterpreted as neither supernatural nor deliberate tricks. But CHIZUKO was going into trances via her brother-in-law's hypnotic induction and attempted to reach these induced sort of trance states in order to access these abilities and to easily get her powers were basically stemming from a sort of instinctual place, like the same spot in the brain where instinct comes from. When you get the feeling that someone's staring at you, and you look up and
they are.
Sure enough, yeah. Because of the way that the tests are performed, the experiments are done, they sort of come to the conclusion that her powers have a sort of selective attention.
Probably a little bit more pedestrian than supernatural.
It's subjective because it's going through a person.
Well, yeah. And this means that she had an accelerated or sort of elevated intuitive ability or skill, not necessarily a psychic power. That was sort of the conclusion that they came to.
So she's Anakin Skywalker.
More or less. I mean, once again, these are the sort of things that we've talked about in other episodes that are sort of the baseline human, quote-unquote, psychic ability. Like, this is stuff that essentially anyone is capable of, but because of the preparation and the hypnosis and the meditation and the trance state she was getting into, she's a little more predisposed to accessing these abilities. So in order to, I guess, essentially come up with better, rigorous scientific testing standards, this is when Dr. Fukurai came up with the idea of introducing what is now known as thoughtography. Now, thoughtography is different from spirit photography, which we also talked about in our Nacho Doyle episode. It's not just taking pictures of ghosts. Essentially, it's using whatever abilities you have to imprint an image onto film. So they were basically taking film plates and doing the same thing, hermetically sealing them so that no one could tamper with them. And she was told to essentially, she was given a symbol or a letter or a character that she was meant to project onto these plates. And this happened many times. And there's actually one fairly famous photo, we'll have it on our website, of what looks like a outline of a human type figure sitting down that was sort of projected. There's all kinds of other film plates with various characters put onto them. Because of the fact that her powers more or less were instigated via hypnosis through her brother-in-law. Once again, we've got these two agendas at work regarding supernatural phenomena and stuff like that. At the same time, at this moment in Japan, people took hypnotism seriously enough that there was a law passed stating that those who practice mesmerism without reason shall be detained for less than 30 days or fined less than 20 yen.
Beaten severely.
Didn't see that one coming, did you? So basically, if there's a law in place, then somebody somewhere, an institute, a group of people, they lend credence to these abilities, to what it can do, specifically hypnotism and mesmerism. There's something to it. I mean, somebody somewhere knows that this has got something behind it, some oomph to it.
Disappointed and angry, quote, "It would be no use studying me any longer," end quote. And on January 18th, 1911, following year, she committed suicide by taking potassium dichromate and died at dawn.
Ironically enough, potassium dichromate is used in the processing of film plates. So,
and baby formula.
Maybe. Probably. Similac.
She had died that morning the following day at the age of 24. The locals took it that her suicide was due to financial trouble with her father. It is generally said that she killed herself because she could not bear the severe attacks from the press and the public. However,
she was being called a fraud left and right, and she couldn't handle it very well.
No news blaming her had ever been reported at that point, so the attacks must have been pretty personal. Damn. Human trolls.
And I think what we kind of know of her personality, and plus being a woman at this time and sort of becoming the center of attention for how special she was to all these very important men, only to be, eventually kicked to the wayside, more or less, because she was not performing up to their high standards, took a toll on her. I mean, she didn't have an easy life already. But oddly enough, even despite all of this, from this point on, CHIZUKO MIFUNE became held as the standard of comparison for future clairvoyance studies. She set the baseline. And even though they're saying outwardly that ESP doesn't seem to exist, once again, mixed messages here. They're saying one thing and doing another. So trying to save their asses. Meanwhile, this new woman comes into the picture, Ikoku Nagao. They are testing her. This is just kind of speculation on my part, but you also have, like I mentioned earlier, you've got like fascist nationalists sort of in the background dictating policy. We don't find out till many years later that, you've got groups like the Black Ocean Society and the Black Dragon Society, the big time like warmongers of World War II who sort of push in this whole new nationalistic, you must die for your country.
You live to serve the emperor.
There is no god other than the emperor, etc. Yeah, so it's like a whole sort of shifting, a hijacking of the zeitgeist, if you will.
And singing that song about birthdays to the emperor.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Right in hell, you old bastard. Have the Rolling Stones killed. Sir. Just do what I say, damn it. At this point, while Miss Ikoku Nagao is also being studied, we also have Takahashi Sadako, who, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to refer to as Sadako, because that's the name they took for the Ring character. Ringu, the original Japanese version, which is essentially all based on this story. Sadako comes into play as well. There's a journalist, as well as unknown mystery men, who had attempted to break in to the dark room and to discern what, if any, sort of tricks were being done or used to develop these thoughtography plates, only to learn that there's no trick. There's just no trick to it. This is mostly, when it works, when it happens, these are like genuine displays of some sort of ability. People were starting to sort of speculate that because both CHIZUKO and later Sadako kind of had to have their backs turned and needed, a little bit of privacy and quiet and concentration to achieve these trance states that were required to access these abilities. People were speculating that the photo plates and the characters on paper that they were given to sort of guess and decipher were sealed in tubes that were like glued shut. And they actually said that when they got these and like turned their back, that both of them somehow took the tube and breathed on it really hard to melt the glue, and then open the tube and then look at what's inside and then put it back and then seal it back up and somehow...
That's the worst glue ever.
Get the glue to work. Like, see, this is what I'm talking about with like the dickhead level of skeptic. Like, it's the whole, swamp gas, even though the UFO was in the desert.
Well, see over here, they say in here that our fair psychologist sent her 19 envelopes with tally impressions by mail, telling her to see through the contents and send them back. However, she sent back 7 of them, which she tried Toshi, mentioning that 3, as she, quote, carelessly dropped them into a hibachi brazier and were burnt. That's horribly inconvenient. What do you think she was doing there, Mike?
Who knows, man? Maybe
and look,
she's probably cooking dinner and taking care of the kids and trying to look and smell pretty while she's doing it.
Here's my favorite one. And as to the rest, they were, quote, she was too tired to do the job. And this is for our first lady.
CHIZUKO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was the first test he sent out, and then he's like, okay, we're going to try this again, but this time a little bit more control.
We've been using CHIZUKO as a
punching
what's
bag.
the word? Yes, but as a template ever since. I mean, look at Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus, like how they're built up and then torn down by
Project Monarch mind control.
Not their fault, they're just
Flash forward to the future.
It's like, it's not my fault I got Billy Ray Cyrus as a dad.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. Like, and once again, they did state many times after CHIZUKO committed suicide that she was the standard by which, they were judging everyone else. She brought forth what was the required at the time, I guess, level of accuracy in displaying these abilities. But once again, you can't just flip it on and off like a light switch. It takes preparation and concentration and skill, etc., that she has to access this stuff. So there's people that are already like shaking their heads like, I don't know about this. Once they've got Nagao and Sadako involved, a lot of these academics that are sort of tangential to all these experiments and tests that Dr. Fukurai is running, all these dudes are looking to poke holes in the process and the results any fucking way they can. They don't care. They come up with all kinds of dumb shit, like the breathing the glue undone thing I mentioned earlier.
Who hasn't done that?
Yeah. I mean, that's how I open all my correspondence.
I mean, I thought that was as obvious.
I receive all my mail in lead pipes glued together.
The majority of overseeing professors involved in the experiments were intense skeptics, so they may have possibly exerted some form of quantum observer effect over some of these experiments as well, which has been taken into consideration. They come in, they're like, this is bullshit, this isn't going to work, she's going to fail. And this sort of, prevailing mind state is why magic died in the world and elves don't exist anymore.
That and quantums.
Yeah, because quantums.
Because quantum fairies.
All possible methods of trickery had countermeasures put into place. Now, Ikuko knew there was no plate in the bag on one occasion because a shifty journalist by the name of Fuji Kyotoku had absconded with it earlier. And when she mentioned this out loud, when they told her, like, all right, do what you do, she's like, well, I can't because there's no plate there. And then all of a sudden, Fuji, the journalist, is like, oh, that's right. I kind of like took it. It's at my house. Hold on, I'll go get it. And it's like, it was a schlep. He tried to act like he didn't do it, and people were like, oh shit, okay.
You mean they need that for the show?
Yeah,
sir. This is not a show. It's an experiment.
So point one for Ikuko once again. What's also weird is that apparently during most of these experiments, there were doctors present who were drugging all the subjects. They were like putting them on some kind of precursor like ADHD medication to help with their concentration. So once again, you have...
Because they're just not interested.
Well, doesn't that completely violate the scientific method?
Yes, exactly. Like you have all the controls. You have all these guys involved. Once again, too many cooks spoil the broth. So Sadako Takahashi, when she comes into the picture, she is already right off the bat, like Fukurai can tell, like there's something weird and special going on with this lady. Because unlike the others, I mean, she also had to sort of establish a trance state of sorts to access these abilities. But where she differed from the two women before is that she was suffering from a form of either multi-personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, or she was possessed. So once again, you have this science versus mysticism dichotomy weighing in on things. But they would do seances with her, and she had this spirit guardian that would come forth and speak through her, and they called it the Goblin, which basically, I don't know if everyone out there knows what a Tengu is. They're sort of like these mythical bird ninja people.
I was going to say bird.
Yeah, they're like bird people ninjas or wizards who live in the mountains. They're a yokai, equivalent of a cryptid of sorts. Maybe a little bit of gray alien thrown in there too, sort of.
Don't cross them.
Yeah, basically.
I'm not crossing a ninja alien.
Yeah, they're spirit beings, but they can achieve, physicality and interact with the world. Anywho, she was possessed by a Tengu spirit who was sort of her Tyler Durden. That's the best way I can put it. Her Hulk, her Mr. Hyde. But the Tengu knew tons of shit. And then she's got another sort of personality who she could access named Saint Nichiren, who was sort of the good guy, the angel on her shoulder. And she altered between these sort of personalities and could tell different things from each one. And this was done by achieving trance states. In 1917, Fukurai published a paper entitled An Idea is an Organism, which expressed his belief that the phenomenon of thoughtography, also called ningraphy, which sort of meant psychic photography, essentially. Same thing.
How do you spell that?
Nengraphy. But I'm just going to keep going with thoughtography because this word was made famous by all this as well. An idea is an organism, which expressed his belief that the phenomenon of thoughtography couldn't be explained in a physical way like X-rays or radium emanations. The paper began with an historical outline of mind-body relationships from Francis Bacon, René Descartes,
Bacon a la carte,
to psychoparallel physicalism.
Will be coming to town this week.
I love their new stuff. Let's see. Psychoparallel physicalism, advocated by various modern psychologists such as Harold Hofting and Wilhelm Wundt.
Woot, there it is.
But essentially, the main idea behind this paper, once again titled "An Idea is an Organism," kind of plays into the whole idea of he started using and throwing around the word ideo-organism, and this sort of plays into the idea of like tulpas and egregores and stuff, thought forms, sentient beings projected into reality via psychic or mental ability.
Imps?
Yeah, sure.
Like that lady that came out of the TV.
Some people, there are theories and theorists that say that, Mothman and Bigfoot and aliens are all a form of this in one way or another. Sort of touches on the ultra-terrestrial theory as well, the psychogenic theory. Mr. Koichi Mita, praised by Fukurai as having the highest psychic potential, was another figure who was examined in these experiments. He was also a stage magician and a conjurer, which once again shows that these experimental guidelines are kind of wonky and all over the place. But he did thoughtography stuff on stage in his act, but under guidelines of experimentation, had trouble performing once again. There's a pill for that.
There's always stage fright for the first time you do it in public, right?
Yep.
It's totally normal.
He was later tapped by the scientific establishment to remote view the dark side of the moon, this magician guy. What was his name again? Koichi Mita. He was later tapped by the military and the scientific establishment to remote view the dark side of the moon. And once again, this was like the 20s and 30s. And he had some accuracy, which was proven years later when they were able to take better pictures of the dark side of the moon. So he was kind of compared to the Soviet satellite photos that came later were what were used to sort of vindicate that this dude also had some degree of ability, kind of like Ingo Swann as well. Fukurai ultimately was hounded out of academia, although he never disputed the truth of psi phenomenon. He fucking touted it as something real until the day he died.
It's real, and you guys are jerks.
It's still real to me, damn it!
We're just stating what we think he would say.
Yeah.
This is a reconstruction of you guys are jerks.
Sadako was also very much... She was also conflated with a lot of the stuff that we mentioned that CHIZUKO did. Like, supposedly, I've also heard that Sadako was the one who was loaning her abilities out to the military and corporations and healing sick people, etc. I think there might be a bit of confusing historical whitewashing of sorts going on in that maybe they didn't want to attribute certain abilities to a woman who ended up committing suicide, or I don't know.
Well, one begat the other, so
yeah.
Never would have happened if she had, not been shit on.
Yeah, she was put through the ringer. That's for fucking sure.
If she was just a man, she could have been.
She just shrugged it off and been fine the next
She would
day.
have been great.
She just swallow all that range down so it becomes cancer later on in life, like we all do.
Yeah.
The big takeaway from much of this whole thing, which came to be known as the Fukurai Affair, this is some of the earliest, best-known paranormal investigation and parapsychology done in Japan at the turn of the century. As stated before, you've got the sort of warring agendas, like warring narratives taking place in the background of like what this all is. Thoughtography ended up becoming like the real star of the show, basically. People were looking for ways to create a sort of media that could be used to show, like, a way to broadcast thoughts. So, like, not just to, like, photos, but,
you're not drawing a picture. It's taking a picture of what's going on inside your brain.
You're projecting images, basically. That was the ultimate intention here.
Which, technically, in, like, a more rudimentary sense, they've kind of done that. I mean, they grafted the receiver to a guy's brain.
Oh, yeah.
And you can draw pictures and circles and stuff.
I was actually just about to allude to another fellow we talked about a while back, Mr. Dr. Professor Nikola Tesla. I know those aren't actual.
They're all true. Kind of.
But Nikola Tesla actually, attempted to create a thoughtography machine as well. And knowing him, he probably succeeded. and the patent is hidden away somewhere. Who knows?
Nigh upon us.
Yeah. This sort of became the overarching theme of what came out of all this. Not all that long after this, fucking World War II erupted, and, you can see who essentially won the won the battle of hearts and minds taking place behind all this. So Death Cult Armageddon fucking won, and they took power.
I was going to say World War I happened, and then...
Yeah, and then, yeah. Like, I don't have any dates in front of me, but let's say the Russo-Japanese War was...
Like 1904 to 1908 or something like that.
And then World War One...
14 to 18.
Okay.
And then if you keep winning, it's called positive reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing's happening to slow down the progression of that nationalism and the radicalism that's forming on that side. Yeah.
You're doing a great job. Thanks.
Exactly.
It's like that. Yeah.
We're watching you. You're doing great.
You're doing great. Keep it up. Keep up the good work. So, essentially, I think that the powers that be getting themselves involved with this, obviously they want to monitor the situation. I think it's also strange that you have certain individuals who are more or less the secret society, Freemasonic lodge, ritual organization, figurehead type people inserting themselves into this whole narrative. The idea was to eventually sort of adapt this ability into some form of working technology. And, this is where, once again, we sort of branch off and talk about some extra weird shit that is sort of tangentially related to this, but also very inextricably linked with this whole story.
And it all takes place in a cat cafe.
There's litter in this coffee. Take this back.
I can't support Big Kitty like that. $16 for an hour.
Don't mess with Texas. Don't litter in my coffee.
By the way, everyone, if you can send some positive healing vibes out for Reggie, the cat. He's not doing too good. Found out he has AIDS. So
feline AIDS.
Yeah.
Seriously, we're not kidding.
So, send some positive vibes for the cat. Yeah, so you have, like, all throughout history a weird... I find it strange that there's this prevailing idea and concept that you still hear about today about how having your picture taken can steal your soul and things like that. I think it plays very much into this whole episode of what was taking place with CHIZUKO and Sadako, etc. Years later, a book would be written that would be made into a movie that would be remade into a American movie called The Ring, which essentially uses all this whole story as a sort of platform jumping off point to tell their story. I probably don't need to tell anyone out there what The Ring entails. You should just go watch it and then die in 7 days.
If you watch a bootleg of it, though.
Yeah.
I taped over it, and we watched Roadkill caught on tape.
If you find a VHS tape just lying around somewhere, don't watch it, because it's probably
porn.
I found it in the woods.
Yeah, it's not going to be good. It's
got that white label on it that's real generic
or
looking.
or just no label. Just like, oh, here's a random VHS tape.
Because
let me go to a library and rent a VCR and find out what's on it. Yeah, I'm sure it's not good.
Everybody stores their VHS in the crawl space like normal human beings.
Like that one story, that family who moved in that house and they found a locked trunk full of fucking VHS tapes, and oh boy,
hilarity ensued.
I'm sure, yeah.
And Jumanji ensued,
and the Poughkeepsie tapes ensued. The whole idea of thought projection into a sort of visual medium is not a new idea. It's been around forever. And thoughtography itself, and the fact that Nikola Tesla tried to create a machine to achieve this ability, this sort of shows that there is and was, and probably at the rate things are going, will be sooner or later a apparatus as such to achieve this. All throughout history, we've had I find that like the field of like optics and the study of light and these sort of devices such as dream machines and zoetropes and magic lanterns or Pepper's ghost, which if all of this stuff I'm listening is flying over your head,
Holograms.
yeah, holograms, more or less. As we've stated before on this show, with an actual hologram, you need some sort of substrate, a surface, a screen of sorts to project them. So when you see Tupac or Old Dirty Bastard, R.I.P., on stage performing as a hologram, quote unquote, that's actually an old technique that's known as Pepper's ghost, which is a sort of a strategic reflection of light projections, basically, is the best way I could put it. A zoetrope is essentially, it's like a turntable that you can put these like cardboard cutouts of animals or, you know, whatever. You set it on top, turn it on, and it projects light all around the room. This was also hijacked and repurposed by famous junkie writer William S. Burroughs and some of his Beat Generation buddies. They sort of repurposed this and turned it into what they called a dream machine. You're supposed to put an intense light in the thing, turn it on the turntable, and close your eyes, and the faster the light gets and projects over your eyes while they're closed is supposed to induce various altered states of consciousness, etc. And then the magic lantern, man, that goes all the way back to like ancient Greek and Roman times. And the magic lantern is essentially more or less like, you remember those overhead projectors from high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
Optics and light and color and imagery, all this is sort of like tied into mysticism, etc. Those magic lanterns were utilized in the ancient Greek and Roman mystery schools during initiation rituals. You've got the equivalent of stained glass being used in big churches and cathedrals because the light comes through and sort of fills the church up with color, light, architecture, and the sound all plays together to
Induces.
Yeah, it induces a sacred space. These are ideas that have been around for a long time. I find it odd also in conjunction with ancient Greco-Roman times. You think about the theater. And the theater was completely 100% like ritualistic. Every time they put on a play, it was no different to them than performing a ritual. Same thing. In some of the more nutty conspiracy theories still around today, that idea has sort of carried into Hollywood, I think. You go into a movie theater, and it's a place where you are automatically, instantaneously meant to sort of enter a state of suspended disbelief. You're already altering your thought pattern.
Yeah, you already lose spatial reasoning.
Yeah.
And
I mean, they put you in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. It shows up in conspiracy theories. There's a weird one I came across not too long ago about a bunch of kids, well, a bunch of grown-ups all had like the same weird memory of going to a mall movie theater, like being asked by some dude in a suit, would like ask their parents if their kids could attend a special movie screening. And at this movie screening, they showed, I don't remember the name of the movie, but no, what's the name of the lady that John Hinckley declared his love by shooting Reagan for? Dr. Lecter, can you turn that high-powered perception on yourself? That lady.
Yeah.
A Fonda? Is she a Fonda?
No, it's not. It's not the Fonda.
Okay.
It's oh man, come on. She's only 13, John Hinckley Jr. Come on, man.
I know the people listening out there are probably screaming it into the radio right now.
We're looking at it. We're looking at it. No, it's it's America's Sweetheart, Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster. Okay, yeah.
Jodie Foster, the people.
Yeah, Jodie Foster played when she was younger a character that was like basically a mafia gun mall, and all these. It was like Chicago. You know, the movie, the film, with all these gangsters, but they were all played by little kids. And this audience was filled with children that were like just picked up all over the mall to attend this thing. And then they remember years later leaving the theater, having missing time and feeling like weird and sick. So they think that maybe they were subjected to some sort of MK Ultra brainwashing experiment, etc. And you
It's
see
called Small Wonder.
Yeah.
They got a little bunch of Manchurian candidates walking around.
Yeah, buddy.
there's weird stories like that all over the internet, up and down on Reddit. I don't want to give too much of what we're going to be talking about next week away, but films, movies, specifically Disney films, The Wizard of Oz, etc.
And The Wiz.
You know what? I know you're joking, but now that I think about it, there may be something to that.
There could be some loose synapses there.
Yeah.
Yep. Lots of urine.
Jump the circuit. Yeah, these films have been utilized allegedly in various brainwashing and mind control programs. Disney is, all up in this stuff. It's just like J-Lo mentioned earlier about Britney Spears and the other one.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're churning these little entertainment industry Manchurian candidates out. According to some people, they're brainwashed, or Avril Lavigne is a clone of Avril Lavigne, or because Eminem,
He's a clone of a stupid person.
yeah,
Her real name is April. She
Yeah.
just changed it to the French pronunciation.
yeah. All these
man.
kids there, their names like Sunshine and Battery and Alibi.
Name that kid 17.
Oh man. Soda. Name the kid Soda. You're welcome. So you have all these goddamn Illuminati Hollywood rumors, but some of it's not too far off because once again, when you walk into a theater, you are sort of participating,
What was it called?
in an unspoken ritual.
The
Original theaters?
yeah.
Originally, most movie theaters were called Orpheums. And this relates to Orpheus, who is all up in the ancient Greco-Roman mystery religions.
The god of dreams, yeah.
That's Morpheus. Orpheus was
Please excuse our TV warden.
Yeah, Orpheus was a demigod son of Apollo. He's the one who was like super good at music. He like tamed the savage beast. He was one of the Argonauts, etc. But his big main story was that he fell in love with a woman, and she died or was absconded with to the underworld, and he went into hell, or Hades, or whatever you want to call it, and he basically harrowed hell to go get her back. And the whole time he's almost being attacked by demons and wraiths and shades or whatever, but he plays his music, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. They forgot, what,
Yeah.
like I remember when I just got out of a rough time once, and man, I hadn't heard music in a while, and when the first thing I heard, like, I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah,
It was just, man, it was great. I don't know.
there's a sense of relief.
Yeah, so
Man, those damn Argonauts, man, they're always getting into weird stuff. We should cover them sometime. Hercules was an Argonaut.
yeah.
And so was Dan Rather, we think. We haven't checked into it yet, but quite possible. He was old enough to be one.
I think he's a Huguenot. So it's odd that you have this ancient Greco-Roman character. This is some straight up James Shelby Downard stuff is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, this is like the whole symbolic, synchro-mystic kind of stuff that
Finding shit.
yeah, that sort of like is taking place amongst us and around us at all times, but we never really pay attention to it. But, you have this ancient Greco-Roman mythological character who goes into the underworld to retrieve the woman he loves and comes back. It doesn't end so good. Spoilers on that ancient.
Is that the one where she couldn't look back?
He couldn't look back at her, yeah.
Okay, until they got out.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, guys.
Yeah. On that centuries old
Story.
tale from mythology. Anywho, the ancient Greco-Roman mystery schools, they adopted this story for their initiation processes. There's a religious aspect to the initiation rituals called catabasis that is basically a reenactment of going into the underground. And a lot of those, like mystery religion, Eleusinian schools like that, sort of incorporated this ritual into their belief system and their ritual practice. Fast forward many years later, and movie theaters are called Orpheums, which is just strange. It basically is a straight translation to House of Orpheus.
Yes, not to be confused with orifice.
That's not to be popular anymore. This is another one of those very, oh brother, where art thou? sort of incorporations of ancient myth and legend that sort of play into our everyday mythology that's going on around us all the time. But it's not just the movie theaters or the dream machines, or what else do we have? The magic lanterns, the zoetropes, the phantascope, the camera obscura. That's another big one. That's what ancient Renaissance painters used. Supposedly, the reason that Leonardo and all those dudes could like paint so realistically is because they were using a technique called camera obscura. Basically, a camera obscura, it's like a dark room with a pinhole poked in one wall, and you have a person's image basically projected onto the wall inside the dark room through that pinhole light, and they could use this to sort of more or less like trace out a person, or it could like be burned onto certain using certain chemicals. It could be burned onto canvases in a way that gave all these old Renaissance paintings a very realistic look to them.
Or maybe a shroud of Turin.
Maybe. I think that was just diarrhea.
It was built by the pyramids.
So looking into all this optic stuff, aside from everything I've mentioned so far, there's also a fella named Ted Serios. He's a clown show.
He's super serious.
But worth, I don't know.
Clown op or a clown show?
He is a clown show.
Oh.
He's essentially a modern version of people trying to achieve thoughtography effects, but he had to be blind, stinking, fucking drunk to do it. He was a bellhop by trade in his 50s or 60s, so I'm sure the whole I gotta be drunk to do it, that was probably just a fucking built-in stipend he came up with to get these people. But he used something he called a gizmo to achieve it, so I don't know, it's kind of been debunked. But
that's pretty terrible that he get a mogwai involved.
Yeah.
Hey man, can't get him wet. He's been thoroughly debunked fairly, but he's still, there's an interesting documentary about him, and the photographs he's produced are pretty interesting as well. I should have mentioned earlier as well that those Orpheums, usually when the the theater is built in your town, when you finally get your Dairy Queen and your Walmart and are officially labeled a town, and then comes the movie theater, at least back in the day, it was usually right across from a Masonic temple, which plays in, once again, to all this sort of old-timey religion coming back and sneaking under the radar. I found one final story. We were going to do some stuff on Kirlian photography, but I'm just going to say off the bat, like, it's pretty cool. I think it works. I think there's something to it. And
it is pretty neat.
Yeah, and I found a pretty fucking intense picture that we're going to throw up on the website as well. That was taken. It's a Kirlian photography picture of a woman who was a schizophrenic drug addict, and you can see in the picture there's like these quote unquote entities on each side of her, sort of like talking in her ears. It's fucking crazy.
I'd be interested to see if they would just do that as a normal study for anyone that gets addicted.
Well, yeah, like the whole Kirlian photography. The whole idea behind it is it's a form of photography that's very electrosensitive and light sensitive, and it picks up your bioelectric aura, basically. It's essentially where and why we still use words like aura today.
Yeah. So there's
aura.
There's an episode of X-Files with the Salamander Man. Do you remember that?
Vaguely, but there's a Kirlian photograph in the opening credits of the blue hand with the red dot in it.
And the so that episode, that guy, the Salamander Man, is
stretchy guy.
No, he's an EMT, and they get in a wreck, and he gets decapitated, and they're like,
"Oh, he can!
Oh my god!" And like
he can grow back shit.
Yeah, he ends up in the morgue, and he just raises up with no head and goes home.
Yeah,
and like he broke into some place and stole a bunch of iodine, and like took an iodine bath, and they're like, "Oh, that's weird. I just wanted to check one thing while we still have this court." Like before he does all that, they take a Kirlian photograph, and they're like, his head still shows up in the photograph. That's fucking weird.
Yep, and that actually happens in Kirlian photography. People who suffer from phantom limb syndrome, etc., who've had an amputation or what have you, their limbs, there's still an outline or an energy projection of them in these photographs. So there's something to this Kirlian stuff, man. It's pretty interesting. Invented during the paranormal gap in Russia, paranormal Cold War, so that's something that came out of there.
That'd be cool to use just to prove that someone is or isn't shaving their horns.
Did your lizard tail fall off this morning? Huh? Gojira? President Gojira? Anyways, I had one final pretty badass thing I came across in all this optics research, other than the Kirlian photography, which is pretty badass, and I think it also sort of like plays into one of the things we kind of bring up a lot on the show of chi and prana, or Dr. Reich's orgone. There's this permeating energy, that flows through all of us in the universe, and
some call it the ether.
Yeah, etc. But I found this story. Have either of y'all? Okay, here's a movie I'm going to throw out. I know at least one of y'all has seen. They Live.
Oh yeah,
with Roddy Piper, and he gets the glasses, and
What's the matter, baby?
He gets these magic, quote unquote, like sunglasses, and when he puts them on, everywhere he looks, there's certain people in the world who look like kind of pseudo-reptilian skeleton people. They're not human, basically.
Oh, so it's like the 10 o'clock people.
Yeah.
That Stephen King book, yeah.
Yeah. Like he looks at signs, like he'll look at a magazine or a sign with his glasses off, and it's like some chick or whatever, and he sees it with the glasses on, and it just says, obey, consume, like everywhere he looks.
Huh.
So there's like this whole secret world going on. Well, I found this story about this dude named Dr. Walter Kilner, who created real-life fucking They Live glasses. There's this chemical that you can no longer get by essentially being outlawed by the U.S. government and many other governments around the world, called dicyanin. I think that's how you pronounce it. And it's dicyanin. And what he would do is he would take it and pour it on a screen, and then he could see auras through the screen. But as I said, dicyanin was made illegal in the 1940s. Later on, these dicyanin screens that he created would be put into goggle form. And there's an apocryphal story about them being utilized as sort of precursors to night vision goggles during the Vietnam War.
I know that this stuff exists because my father's role in the military brought him very close to it many times. One of the projects that he was in charge of at the time was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. Wow. And this technology was a night vision goggle, but it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. When you look at a night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. But my father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. And because of the technology being used at that time, it created very interesting effects that they could not deal with. Testing these new technologies for the military that had their troops always use these goggles. And those units became self-destructive. They went down in a horrid situation. So as soon as he saw what's going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. But the effect was this. A gunner in a helicopter would have no problem using these goggles. And only everything is showing up as a sort of a faint reddish image. And it was true night vision the way we have it now. And even a greater depth, because you could also flip it and get an extra layer that was sort of yellowish that would be heat signatures as well. And they don't have those combined anymore in these goggles. Anyway, the goggles that were presented to the gunners, and they're flying along, and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot, and all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but at an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" And the kid is just sweating profusely, and his eyes are just dilated beyond belief. And he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter. And he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter. So he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity. So it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters. Now, officers had been told not to wear these. Okay, the pilots were told not to wear them. But my dad put them on to see what the hell was going on, and to hear him describe it, it was like being in the worst kind of a demonic gothic hell.
Jeez.
That you'd look out at the tops of trees and you'd see these creatures with big wings and claws and everything come flying off of the tops of the trees. But you take the goggles off and there's not even a disturbance in the fog above the canopy of the trees. And it was tied to the red image. As soon as they went to green, all of this kind of stuff disappeared.
One question. Are these connected to the modern night vision goggles people use to see UFOs?
It's the same technology. It's just that the translation is done through a different phase alignment, and we're not seeing everything that the goggles could show you. Now, the red aspect of it is interesting because the green display comes from electrons, not photons, okay? And it comes from an electron transmission. Presumably, they were still doing electron transmission. They were just turning it into a red filter. And the people that wore the red goggles, the gunners and these kind of people, were unstable at best for months. Many of them were cycled right out of the war as a result of this experience. The apparitions could see you and you could see them. That's what caused these people to think they were under attack by these beings and to respond by shooting at them.
There's this whole secret atmosphere of weird amoeba-like creatures floating around all around us at all times, and just strange atmospheric organisms, etc. These goggles were immediately recalled. They were destroyed, and dicyanin was made incredibly hard to get a hold of. The whole field of sort of occult optics is very interesting, like even outside of like ghost photos and fucking orbs. Who gives a shit? Or your classic, what are those things called? Rods. Have you heard of those?
Dowsing rods?
Oh yeah, dowsing rods.
No, the flying rods. They're like creatures, entities.
They're just rods that fly around?
They're basically like...
Is it some dude named Rod, or is it just like a rod?
A-Rod?
I was gonna say, is it A-Rod?
No, like, you get floaties across your eyes?
Yeah.
And they look like weird little organisms, basically?
Because they are.
Yeah.
They're protein strands.
Yeah, like, these are those, but actually out in front of you, supposedly. Like, they're another form of, like, cryptid or alien.
And they just hold rods in the air?
No, they're just called rods because they're sort of long and oval shaped.
They're A-rod like.
Oh. Yeah,
they cost $45,000 at bat.
Yeah, you got to build your team with them. No, yeah, they like float around in the actual atmosphere, and they're sort of like a form of cryptid. But supposedly, this is what these glasses or goggles were like letting this dude see in Vietnam. And this once again sort of plays into other semi-corroborated stories of sort of like amoeba-like sky entities. Like, there's people who have seen UFOs that shapeshift and think that they're, not a machine, like a...
It's called a cloud.
I don't know. It's a crazy rabbit hole. Check it out. Throw some stuff up on our website. Definitely the picture of the entities next to the girl in the Curlian photo. There's a lot to it, man. It's weird shit. And
no shortage of it.
Yeah. If you thought anything you heard today was strange or in any way, I don't know, shocking or offensive, man, just wait till next week. Because we're going to outdo ourselves. I'm actually kind of...
This is going to be hard for y'all, not for us.
Yeah, well...
We're just reading the news.
I'm actually kind of somewhat nervous about how to present some of this stuff, because it's pretty fucked up. And but you know what?
You could present it
It's nothing you haven't heard a QAnon person yell at the top of their lungs on television, probably at some point.
We may just have to break it up with 30 seconds of cats
Or
palate cleansers.
or a coat hanger.
Yeah, chop it up with a coat hanger because it's going down. So yeah, that's our show for today. R.I.P. CHIZUKO. Good vibes to Reggie the cat. Good vibes all around, everyone.
Yeah, also, UK, you know who you are. You guys doing great. Thanks for coming to the website. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You guys are diehards.
So, yeah. I'm always trying to find time to work on that and add to it and make it better in my spare time. So, keep an eye on it. Cool things headed that way when I get a second, amongst all the other...
Yeah, we decided to forego our Facebook page because we just don't have time for that, and it's all the same stuff. So just go to our website.
Yeah, that's going to be basically our clearinghouse for any kind of socials or whatever. You can message us through there. The website is kooks-cranks- all one word, spelled out, -iconoclast.com. Or you can get a hold of us at KC and, the whole word, A&D, icast@gmail.com. That's KCANDI cast@gmail.com. Drop us a line. Let us know how you feel.
We'll write you back.
Yeah, we will.
Eventually.
So, yeah. Anything else, gentlemen?
Negative.
Be on the lookout for some of these polls we're going to be doing because we want to test the water before we actually go and investigate some of these subjects. We kind of want to know what you guys would be into if we were to put that out there.
We want to know what you want.
We know what you think about our polls.
Yeah. And also, don't support Big Kitty. Just get your own.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
The lasagna lobby knows what we're talking about.
It's that damn cat cafe, man. It just $16 an hour.
Hey, man. Aren't you kind of glad that we live in a dumb, fucking stupid enough world that there is a cat cafe and that provides someone with a job in a gentrified neighborhood?
Yeah, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe that's exactly what's wrong with everything. I'm probably leaning towards the second now the more I think about it.
I mean, you got a cat who's...
He's not paid well. He's in a gentrified neighborhood getting treated like crap. Probably the cats get treated better.
Exactly.
It gets old ladies a job.
Yeah.
Instead of just, here's a herd of cats in my house.
You like kitty?
It takes multi-generational accumulated wealth and leaves it to an animal when they die. So let's see more of that, everyone.
Yeah.
We need to see more millionaire puppies and dogs and cats in the world. And
chinchillas.
Yeah, and maybe
underrepresented.
Maybe there'll be a whole weird Egyptian Renaissance worshiping of these animals coming back around. We're obviously rambling, me especially, so we're gonna cut that right there. And we'll see you next week. Tune in for the gruesome, horrific craziness. Love you guys. Thanks for stopping by. See you next week.
Make sure you're wearing your seatbelt for the show.
Clean underwear.
I'm Mike.
I'm Matt.
I'm J-Lo.
And this has been the Kooks, Pranks, and Iconoclast.